Monday edition of Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. You got Mac and Mac and Pat. It's a triple Mac attack. Pat McAfee. Oh no, it's Rob Maaddi. It must have been the muscle shirt that kind of threw me off there. Is that you, Maaddi?
Hey, what's up, fellas? Happy Monday.
How are you, buddy? Appreciate it.
Good to see you, Rob. Good to see you.
Doing good.
Where should we start? I'm going to start with Peter King because we talked about it. His Football Morning in America column. He did his way too early power rankings. We all know what they're worth, but at number one in the top category, which I believe he described as no weaknesses, the Philadelphia Eagles. Do you find no weaknesses on this particular team right now?
Yeah, I had to jump into that way too early stuff this year, and I kind of felt uncomfortable because all these years I'm talking about way too early, this, way too early, that. Next thing you know, the day after the draft, we're putting out a way too early mock for next year. I'm like, oh, now I'm that guy. But no, I don't think any team can have no weaknesses. And when you lose, let's just start with you lose your offensive coordinator and your defensive coordinator.
Yeah,
I know Jonathan Gannon's been a whipping boy for Eagles fans lately, especially with how things transpired. But there's a transition there, right? When you lose your two coordinators and when you lose on the Eagles side as many defensive players as they did, I wouldn't call it a weakness, but there's a transition. There's going to be an adjustment. There's going to be guys who have to step up and get acclimated and play some more. So while it's a cool term to say no weaknesses, and it's easy to fill in that line as a little blurb or whatever, I don't think the Eagles are a unflawed, perfect team at this point. And we always see whoever loses the Super Bowl, there's always that little bit of a hangover the next year. I got to go back and look at it, but teams who've lost the Super Bowl have not done well even getting to the playoffs the following year. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for the Birds this year.
All right, here's where I'm going to go with Peter's use of the phrase "can find no weakness." I get it. He wanted to put them in 7 groups, so he had to come up with a moniker for each of the 7 groups. Don't know that I would use that one. Find no weaknesses. Former Panther linebacker, and I guarantee you I might be the only guy in town who knows that the Greenville University nickname is Panthers, where Nick Morrow came from. Division III, outstanding linebacker at the Division III level. You can't have Nick Morrow as a starting linebacker and say no weaknesses. Can you, Rob Maaddi?
Yeah, well, there you go, Jody. you found one for me. I don't think you can say no weaknesses at all. You know, I'll go back to that, and you look at this team and you look at some of the areas where they were able to improve. They improved strengths, I thought, and that's a good thing for them in the NFL draft. When you get 2 more pass rushers, when you get 2 guys more on the defensive line, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, who are going to bolster and upgrade, especially the way they like to rotate and the way they like to go in and play that way. I thought they upgraded a big-time strength of the football team. They certainly weren't going to go in and add another linebacker. They just don't do that in the draft. I know everybody thought that they might go and get a running back. They didn't do that via the draft, but they did via a trade. So, yeah, Jody, when you got Nick Morrow as the starting linebacker, that's a little bit of
maybe if you're Greenville University, it's not a weakness, but yeah, for the NFL, it's probably not where you want to be at that particular position. And by the way, I think Howie Roseman is going to add, I don't know when, I don't know where, but I think he's going to add a veteran linebacker at some point. And we'll see how that shakes out. You know, one of the more interesting stories over the past 24, 48 hours, Rob, I wanted to pick your brain about Andrew Luck in Washington, checking in to see if he would perhaps want to come back and play. He's still only 33 years old. Had Jim Irsay tweeting about potential tampering, which we know all about here in Philadelphia now with Jonathan Gannon. One, are you surprised? And two, if they're uncovering every rock, the Washington Commanders, to try to find Andrew Luck or somebody to play the quarterback position, why did they stop at Sam Howell? What am I missing here?
Well, I thought that report, John, was last year.
Yeah, it was. It was.
Okay, yeah, no, you're right, and then this year they decided. I think this year going with Sam Howell is kind of saying, hey, we're in rebuild mode. I don't care how they want to spin it. When you're in a division with 3 other teams that made the playoffs, one went to the Super Bowl, and you're going to go with Sam Howell as your starting quarterback, you're in rebuild mode. You're 4th team looking up. But that is a very interesting report that if they had called the Indianapolis Colts and inquired about Andrew Luck, everything's fine. If they went out and reached out to Andrew's representatives, as Jim Irsay indicates by putting out that tweet, and I think he would know who was contacted, that does violate the tampering policy. So now what does the NFL do? How do they react to that? Because when it was Tom Brady and the Miami Dolphins, it was a first-round pick. Are Washington, the Commanders, going to be docked the first-round pick? Will they be allowed to work things out with the Colts, as we saw that the Eagles and the Cardinals were able to work something out with Jonathan Gannon for that phone call and whatever else may have transpired there? I think this is pretty interesting, and it opens up a little bit of it's going to open up a whole lot more potential cases because, guys, teams talk to other players one way or another. You reach out, hey, is this guy going to potentially be interested? Is he going to hit free agency? When these deals get done at right at the turn of free agency like that, Jody, I mean, these have been conversations that have been ongoing. It's not the 2-day tampering period.
Whoa. You mean TJ Edwards didn't get a deal done in 7 minutes, Rob?
Imagine that, dotting all the I's and crossing the T's.
Yeah.
So I think this opens up a ton of potential more cases. So it's going to be very interesting to see how does the NFL move forward with this. Is there going to be an investigation? Is there going to be any kind of potential penalty? And I got to reach out to Jim Irsay because he's not one to hold back. So let's see what he says about this.
Get some good quotes out of him. And Rob, I know you've been, I've never been, John has been. The best tampering fest is the combine. You see the general managers huddling with the agents and you go, oh, who are they talking about? Well, they got no players on their team that are represented by him. Oh, might it be a free agent that's available that would fit for that team? Oh, no, they weren't having that conversation. It's so blatant at the combine. Why do you think the NFL is now cracking down?
If they are, right? Because they haven't.
Well, I think you have to at least give it some credence because of what they negotiated between the Eagles and the Cardinals. That had never happened. A phone call between a general manager. You tell me that's never happened before? A coach who's prepping for a playoff game at a time you're not supposed to be talking. There's never been a call like that made before. The Eagles called them on the carpet. Yeah, the Cardinals self-reported. That happened, I'm sure. Somebody blew the whistle on them, and the NFL felt that they needed to act. What do you think changed?
I think the Eagles raised a big stink about it. I think it depends on who the aggrieved party is. If it was in a case where the team and the coach left and they're like, yeah, whatever, or they won the Super. Had the Eagles won the Super Bowl, this may have been a different.
Not even a story, Rob.
Yeah, it would have been a different. Yeah, exactly. So I think the way that worked out, the Eagles are pretty ticked off about it, and no matter what they say or the face that they put out publicly, can't be happy with that. Raise enough of a stink, and you're going to get something done, and they were able to do that. Now, clearly, Jim Irsay has followed along because he's now creating an impression that he's not happy with that. So now the NFL's being put in the spotlight here. What are you going to do if this really happened? If it unfolded that way? They did set a precedent a year ago with Tom Brady when they docked Miami a first round.
Yeah.
Once you do that, now you got to take everyone seriously, and teams would be wise and would be smart to raise this stink.
Well, Jody brought something up, and I don't know, so I want to run it by you, Rob. There was a Adam Schefter mentioned that Jalen Carter called the Eagles to say he wanted to play with them, whether it was draft night or shortly before. Do you know the timing, Jody? I forget the
No,
timing.
I don't either. He just said before the draft.
Yeah. Potential draftees calling teams. Are there any restrictions to that? I don't know what could be accomplished. Now, Jalen denied it. I mean, if Seattle wants to take him at 5, they take him at 5. It doesn't matter who he wants to play for. But do you know any sort of the restrictions or the rules when it comes to that, to potential draftees contacting teams maybe they want to play for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't heard of any kind of restrictions on that. And I've heard other stories where I'm forgetting who it was, but it may have been a quarterback who had fallen in the draft and called the team and said, whatever concerns that they may have had, those are, I'll take care of that, or something along those lines. I don't see, but did Jalen Carter, the more intriguing part of that is, did he call them before the draft entirely? Hey, I'm fine going 10, or was it when they were on the clock at number 9 or closing in after Seattle didn't pick them? Because when we looked at that draft going in, I had Seattle at 5, Eagles at 10. Those are the 2 top 10 teams that look like. So once it went through Seattle and they went with Witherspoon, is it then that he made that phone call? I think that's an interesting point to that.
Yeah, Schefter said it on radio station here in Philadelphia, and I just thought it was very interesting because Jalen came out and said, "No, I don't remember making that call. Don't know what he's talking about." So I thought it was very interesting and something that we will probably keep our eye on going forward. I want to run this by you, Mr. Maaddi, because I've done this with a couple other guests that we've had, and I'm back to Nick Morrow and Greenville University and the fact that the Eagles, I think, still need an upgrade at linebacker. Patrick Queen of the Baltimore Ravens. They chose not to pick up the 5th-year option on his contract. They drafted his potential replacement, the kid Simmons, in the 3rd round from Clemson this year. If he were to come out on the open market, I'll give you the deal. You tell me who doesn't pull the trigger. Eagles give the Ravens a 2nd-round draft pick, but the Ravens give the Eagles back a 3rd-round draft pick. So that's about 120 points on the draft value chart, which is equivalent to a 3rd-round pick. I would say just Eagles give them a 3rd-round pick, but the Eagles don't have a 3rd-round pick to give right now. So you got to finagle it a little bit. Is Patrick Queen walk year worth a 3rd-round draft pick to a team like the Eagles?
So they're getting Patrick Queen and
a 3rd. For a
and a 3rd for a 2nd? Yeah, I'd make that deal. And we've seen, John, you just mentioned a little bit earlier how you believe they'll still add a linebacker. We've seen Howie do that, waiting until June, even into August. When was Ronald Darby acquired? This Super
August,
Bowl year? That was
in camp,
right?
Yeah. And obviously last year Chauncey was August 30th.
DJ, right? Late.
Yeah. So and that's kind of been a little bit of an MO. Go get these guys on potential walk years. Patrick Queen's a guy who started 50 games already in the NFL. He's a big time upgrade for a team that looks like it is a certain Super Bowl contender. Some people think they have no weaknesses, so why not go out there and build on this team?
Well, they don't need them, Rob. They don't need them. They have no weaknesses.
Well, since we don't agree on that point right there,
right.
We think, a 3rd-round pick, you're getting. I would make that deal.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think Howie values. You mentioned Ronald Darby. They valued the cornerback position. That's an interesting trade because he got injured early in the season, but came back. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl. So
was that just for J-Matt? I forget. Was it just a straight up Jordan Matthews for Ronald Darby trade?
No, they had to give up a draft pick. I have to double check. And they gave up a pretty significant pick. I'll have to double check.
Jordan Matthews and a pick, huh?
Yeah. And Darby was, I think they thought he was going to be a really good player. So, they probably overpaid a little bit, at least at the time. And, you can argue, let's see, and a third round pick. So it was Matthews
Oh,
and a
okay,
third
yeah.
round pick. So pretty
That's pretty
significant,
significant.
pretty significant. And last year they got CJ at a bargain basement rate because New Orleans just
Yeah.
wanted out of that relationship. So it kind of depends on the situation. I just don't think they value linebacker enough to send that kind of valuable asset in their minds, even a third round pick, Jody. I think fourth round pick, that's where it would start with me. If they can get them down to that, I think they do it. Those day 2 picks, man, it's going to have to be at a valuable position.
Get a day 2 pick back. You're giving up a day 2 pick and getting a day 2 pick back.
Yeah, but I'm saying day 2 picks are off the table. From that at that position, I think.
You're not trading a day 2 pick. You're giving up a day 2 pick and getting a day 2
I
pick
understand.
Back.
You're
that's what makes it.
You're talking about spot. You're talking about draft. You're moving up however many spots, so you still have a pick, but it goes from second. I understand what you're saying. I'm saying forget about day 2. I'm moving on day 2. I'm saying at linebacker it starts on day 3 with this team. I could be wrong. They need help at the position. That's just my belief.
Did Howie give up that day 2 pick for Ronald Darby? Again, I know position. Cornerback, he cares about. Running linebacker, he doesn't. But he gave up a day 2 pick and a player to get Ronald Darby.
Well, that's
right?
my whole point. I'm talking about the position. Look at them at cornerback now. They have Darius Slay. They have James Bradbury. They bring in Greedy Williams. They draft Calais Ringo. They still have Zach McPherson. I mean, they value that position. Linebacker, we're talking, hey, Nakobe Dean, you and your 35 snap, it's all on you. No weaknesses, baby. Go do it. There's a difference between their value of those positions ostensibly, or would you disagree with Rob?
No, I agree that they clearly don't put value on line, but they haven't done that historically. You go back to the way they treated Jeremiah Trotter when he left after, 2003 season. So that's just been an organizational philosophy. But if they want a linebacker, well, actually, he's not going to be an edge rusher, right? Micah Parsons was in the building in Philly yesterday.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
You don't even have to go home. Just
put.
He's all about that. But Mike is more. He's an edge. He's not really a linebacker. So not going to fit the bill.
All right, Maaddi Man, Thursday is the NFL schedule release.
Maybe.
They're hoping for it. And they haven't completely locked it in yet. But when it does come out, whenever it comes out, game 1, night 1, Thursday night, not Amazon, NBC, first game of the year, Kansas City Chiefs versus who?
I think it could be a rematch of the Super Bowl. You look at Eagles and Chiefs in that as a potential matchup, and that's been one that a lot of people think could happen. It makes a ton of sense. I don't like to see inter-division games in week 1. I prefer seeing them middle of the season, later in the season. If you're going to have an NFC, AFC matchup, and that's the way it should start. And that was the last game of the season. It makes all the sense in the world for it to be the Eagles. Jalen Hurts coming off that contract, coming off that Super Bowl, Thursday night football at Arrowhead and whatever else it's called with those initials against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. Now, Rob, you have a lot of contact with the league office. They got to make Amazon happy now. They got to make Fox, ABC. See how many? There's so many they got to make happy.
Black Friday game. You got a Christmas triple header. There's so many elements that go into this.
Are they pulling out the hair, or they have no hair left, like Jody and I, because they have too many cooks in the kitchen that they got to make happy. They got to make everybody happy.
That's why I think we're at Monday right now, and we haven't heard the official announcement that the announcement is coming. Normally, they're gonna milk it for a little bit and say all we have heard was they are hoping to, expecting to, just because last year it was released on that Thursday, whatever the date was, 10, 11, 12, right around there, and this would be the Thursday night. So I think it's a little bit more complex, a little bit more complicated this year, the addition of a couple other elements to it. So, you know what, though? Those guys are all well compensated. The league is $1 billion industry. I don't feel bad for them. All you got to do is set a schedule, make it happen, and do the right thing. Stick it. I'm sure you pop it into the system, and you get 1 billion different ways it can come out, and you choose the best way to go.
Rob, we haven't had you on since the Eagles made an addition to their running back room after the draft, as the draft was ongoing, adding DeAndre Swift in a trade with the Lions. We know they've already signed Rashad Penny. They've got Kenny Gainwell and Boston Scott coming back, and a bunch of guys coming in to take a shot, either undrafted free agents or guys working out this week to try and get themselves on the 90-man roster. Miles Sanders scored a bunch of touchdowns last year, rushed for over 1,200 yards. Somebody's got to replace it. We don't think it's going to be any one individual. We'll jettison ahead to September. How are the touches? How are the carries? How are the plays going to leak out on the Eagle backfield this year? You got to guess.
I think it's hot hand. It's always going to be hot hand with this team and who's healthy. With Rashad Penny, obviously, we've seen an injury history. DeAndre Swift hasn't been able to play all 16, all 17 games. So it's whoever is healthy at the moment, whoever's got the hot hand. But that's what they do. They're running back by committee. When you're paying those two guys, what is it, less than $3 million, about $3 million?
DeAndre's at like 1.8, and they paid Rashad $600,000 guaranteed. So
that's just, to me, it's incredible value you're getting at that running back position, and makes a ton of sense. We've seen up until this draft, we've seen where the running back position has been devalued to the point where teams aren't really picking top 10 and top 12. And of course, Bijan Robinson goes 8 and Jahmyr Gibbs goes 12. But I love what the Eagles do there. I think they have enough guys to where they'll be able to continue. Their run game starts with Jalen Hurts. When you hear people talking about how well they effectively run the football and what kind of, it starts with Jalen Hurts and that offensive line. And if that offensive line is going to stay healthy and dominate, and if Hurts is healthy, it really doesn't matter whether it's Penny, whether it's Swift, whether it's Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, or a to-be-determined Trey Sermon, whoever it may be, right? I think those guys will be able to run behind that line, and what Jalen Hurts adds to that run game and how they keep defenses off balance is such a big-time asset. So where I think they can get away with that and not have to pay Miles Sanders the money he's getting.
That was my argument during the Bijan or bust days here in Philadelphia, Rob. I was like, you got Jalen Hurts. You don't need Bijan Robinson.
It was never going to happen. It was never going to. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm not in Philly anymore, where I'm listening to the talk radio daily, and I don't know how hot and heavy it got.
It was bad.
Gary.
If you know anything about the team and have followed them and know how they just don't value, they're not going to do that. And I love Bijan Robinson. Love the kid. Sat down with him, talked to him. Think he's a extremely talented player and a very polished.
I think he's a great player. Yeah. But I tried to tell people is McMullen hates Robinson, Bijan Robinson, McMullen. No, the Eagles aren't going to take him. I swear, Rob. I think people like to be lied to. I really do.
In Philly?
Yeah. They were never going to take him. It was never going to happen. And now everybody's happy with Jalen Carter. It's funny how that works out. But
I'm a little concerned there.
Rob, the much too early power rankings that you said you were kind of pushed into doing, that you were a little uncomfortable doing. What were your top 3 teams in the NFC? How did you put the top 3 teams in the conference? In what particular order?
Pretty sure I had Cowboys, Eagles, and 49ers. And the only reason I didn't have the Eagles as the top team, the only reason, I didn't have them as the top teams, because I always feel that there's a little bit of that Super Bowl hangover we talked about. There's always a little bit of how difficult it is to lose a Super Bowl, get that close, and then you start to lose some coaches and you start to lose some players. And can you go through that? Like the Eagles were very healthy as a team last year. Like that offensive line stayed healthy. Like you never know if the injury bug is going to hurt them. Do I think they're the most talented team on paper? Yes. But because I factored in the intangibles and all that stuff, I actually put the Cowboys in the Super Bowl, which I know Philly fans.
Oh,
yeah, it's a good thing you're in South Philly right now. You're down in Florida and not in South Philly.
I picked Bengals Cowboys is my early.
I like the Bengals. I'm glad Jody went there. I was gonna ask you who in the NFC. Now I assume you picked the Cowboys before you realized the Eagles had no weakness. Now you'll have to make the proper adjustments. But
and I love the 49ers. I think that they're going to be, assuming they can get Brock Purdy back relatively maybe by October. I saw him at the Super Bowl. We were not the Super Bowl, the draft. We were working out at the same. He wasn't there to announce the Mr. Irrelevant. He was there doing a little promotion, and we were working out in the gym at the hotel, and he's got the scar on his elbow, and he's a great kid. One of the 49ers who has never blamed Philadelphia or the fans or the Eagles and knows that the better team won that, but looks like he's on schedule, and I don't think he'll be ready for September, but I think if he can be ready by October, they'll be okay to go. So I think it'll be 49ers, Cowboys, Eagles top.
All right, so then let me follow up with that. Since you got inside info, you're on a treadmill next to him and you're saying
it's exactly what he was doing. He wasn't doing any heavy weight with that elbow.
How big was that scar,
right, Jody?
How big was the scar?
Pretty big. It was nasty looking.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So if that's the case, and say Brock's got the right read, you're taking him at his word. October 1st, week 4, misses the first 3 games of the season. That's when he makes his return. Who's going to be the 49 quarterback for the first 3 weeks?
Sam Darnold or Trey Lance?
Darnold, baby.
Yeah, you still hear those rumors about Trey Lance. You still hear a little bit of conversation. You and I talked about this before on this episode on this show with the Vikings being a potential suitor for Trey Lance.
I love Kirk Cousins.
Johnny's still pushing the.
He loves him. Rob knows.
Yeah, you're not the only one.
Rob knows.
I keep hearing that Trey Lance and he's from that area and all that stuff that could happen. Sam Darnold. They also brought in Brandon Allen, right? They got
like 5 quarterbacks.
They got Nick Foles is available if they need another veteran in that room. So
Kyle's hilarious because Kyle and I'm sure you know Kyle a little bit. He reminds me of John Gruden back in the day. He would fall in love with a quarterback and then fall out of love quicker. He hates every quarterback he coaches except for Kirk Cousins. And nobody has ever stopped talking about it for years. About him trying to get back together with Kirk Cousins.
He's my guy Brock's his answer though. Just get healthy and there you go. You don't have to pay $45 million to a quarterback.
Well, here's the thing with Brock. I can only go with baseball. I mean, UCL, I don't see any way he's back. Even by October. And people have brought up Bryce Harper here.
I was going to say that Bryce Harper come back in July, Johnny Mac.
He's DHing. This guy's got to throw a football. This is like a pitcher coming back.
Yeah.
That is not even.
Although it wasn't like a full Tommy John. I believe he had the brace procedure as well. I didn't ask him if it was the. I'll find out. But I don't think it was a full Tommy John reconstruction.
Well, that would help. All right.
Yeah.
Then maybe I can buy it a little bit more. September's. I can't even imagine September. I think October. They would count themselves lucky if he could be back by October. And who knows? By the way, that team is so good, Rob. I'll throw out this speculation. At Rob Maaddi, make sure you follow Rob on Twitter. Tremendous AP NFL writer. Nobody's more plugged into this league than Rob Maaddi. if you're San Francisco, say it's October, Brock's ready to come back. They're a really good team. We all know that. They're 4-0 with Sam Darnold, 5-0. You going to bench Sam Darnold at that point for a guy coming off a UCL injury?
It'd be tough to do. And in that division, like I don't think the Rams are going to be competitive. I think Arizona is going to be a potential last place number 1 pick in the draft kind of team. Seattle, it's upgraded for sure. They made the playoffs last year, but Gino's got to do it for another season. I think they can afford to come out of the gate at 2-2 even, guys. They don't even have to come out 4-0. But if they are 4-0, as you're saying, if they're 4-0, 5-0, it's hard to bench. It's hard to bench any quarterback for someone who isn't fully established, being paid gazillions of dollars. This is Brock Purdy that you would be benching Sam Darnold or Trey Lance or whoever's 5-0 for. I think it'd be hard to do.
And the thing is, you're judging him in practice because there are no games. There's no minor league rehabs for quarterbacks to show that their arm is okay. You just got to kind of throw them into the mix, which is going to be difficult. But it's going to be fun, and we'll be talking about Rob Maaddi with him during the season, about all his stuff, Eagles related as well. Go work out. He's going to go pump iron. Brock Purdy may just be on the treadmill, but Maaddi's going to go pump iron.
Heck yeah.
By his outfit.
Thanks, fellas.
Thanks, Rob.
Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press here with us on Birds 365. All right, running a little late, come back, final timeout. We will put a bow on the show.
Do you stream on a Roku?